of June the 11th. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Lauren? Ms. Parker? Mr. Richard? Here. Mr. Burney?
Here.
Sorry, Mr. Willie. Mr. Doherty?
Here.
Mr. Baggert?
Here.
Mr. Fitzmaurice?
Here.
Mr. Drum?
Here, Fräulein.
Mr. Randolph?
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Phones and pagers, if you'll put them on silent, turn them off, we would appreciate it. Any appeals, if you disagree with any decisions from the commission, there are appeals cards over here to my right. You can fill one out and turn it in. And same thing's true for speaker cards. You'll have 10 minutes for speaking on each case and a 5-minute rebuttal. After the case is heard, if you don't want to hang around and see the rest of the commission meeting, you're welcome to exit the building, but please exit the building. Don't go out in the lobby and talk. Please rise for the invocation by Mr. Randolph and the pledge by Mr. Fitzmaurice.
Gracious Father, once again, we come before you with bowed down head but lifted hearts as we recognize and realize your grace and mercy in each and every one of our lives. We thank you once again for this day. We thank you for this opportunity to represent the parish as commissioners, lead, guide us in the right decisions. Heavenly Father, we ask that you also continue to bless our parish government, our staff, our employees, Lord, and also all the citizens that we represent and Lord, that preside here in the parish. And gracious Father, we ask that you continue to be with all of our military personnel, veterans, law enforcement officers, firefighters, and emergency personnel. Grant them the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding they need to continue to lead us, maintain, protect, and preserve our freedom and liberty. And all these blessings we ask in your holy name. Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On the agenda, there's election of officers, but we did elect officers at last month's meeting, but further down in the agenda, we need to ratify the election, which we'll do when we get down to it. Approval of the June 11th minutes. There was a copy in your packet. Hopefully you had an opportunity to review it. And we need a motion. Mr. Randolph.
Make the motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Mr. Randolph to approve. Mr. Baggert.
Second.
Second by Mr. Baggert. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right. This is a public hearing. Request for postponement, staff.
Yes, the first case on the agenda, entering the trace right away, there's a request for postponement.
Okay.
We have also on the second page, 2019-1494, the Bellevue Estates for preliminary subdivision. And also on the third page, 2019-1554, Lakeshore Village for Phase 4A1. And the petitioners are here,
15, which?
1514.
1514.
Okay, Mr. Marone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone on behalf of H&I Investments.
and I am handling both, the first two matters that Ms. Lambert just mentioned, the request to enter the trace on page 1, and also Bellevue Estates preliminary subdivision review on page 2. If you noticed in your staff comments, there was a recommendation from engineering to postpone both of these items because there are some outstanding issues and questions. So we concur in that recommendation, would ask you to postpone both of them. There's a meeting set up, I believe, for this Thursday morning with Mr. McHugh's office and with the engineers of the parish so that we can sit down and try to work through, understand what those issues are, and hopefully get them resolved before we come back before you next month.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Rowan. Does anyone in the audience wish to have any discussion on these, on this first item, entering the trace?
You gonna read the comments for
I'll
this?
bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Baggett. There you go.
I'll move to postpone both items.
We need to do them individually. We need to do them individually.
Okay, I move to postpone the first item, enter into the Tammany trace.
Okay? Motion by Mr. Baggett. Mr. Randolph.
Second.
Second by Mr. Randolph. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item is on page 2, 2019-1494, PP Bellevue Estates, developer owner H&I Investments, engineers Kelly McHugh and Associates, Parish Council District Honorable Jake Groby. This property is located on the south side of Hoffman Road, east of LA 59, Abita Springs, Ward 4, District 7. And staff, we've got a postponement. Mr. Morone had made a presentation. Commissioner Drum.
I make a motion, we postpone for 1 month.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Any comment from the public? I'll bring it back to the commission. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item that the staff is indicating needs to be postponed is 2019-1514-FP. It's on page 3. Lakeshore Villages Phase 4A1. Developer owner is D.R. Horton Incorporated, Gulf Coast. Engineer surveyor is Duplantis Design Group, PC Acadia Land Surveying LLC. Honorable Michelle Blanchard is the council person. General location, the property is located north of Oak Harbor Boulevard, west of LA 433, east of Interstate 10, Slidell, Ward 9, District 13. Mr.
Thank you. Shane.
Shane. Sorry, Jeff.
That's okay. That's all right. Good evening. Jeff Shane, Jones Fussell, P.O. Box 1810 in Covington. I represent Horton, the owner developer. We met with staff week before last and agreed with their reasoning and thinking that this matter should be deferred. We do think that we'll be back before you in August, hopefully in a position to request final with a slim, if any, punch list. So we ask that this be postponed till your August meeting.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Yes, sir. Anyone in the audience wish to comment? I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Baggett.
Move to postpone for 1 month to the August meeting.
Motion to postpone for 1 month by Commissioner Baggett. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Any further discussion from the commissioners? Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we'll go back to the first of the agenda. Revocation review, we have none. Minor subdivision review, 2019-1518-MSP. minor subdivision of 3.36 acres into parcels A and B. Spencer and Christine Bean are the owners, and the surveyor is Kelly McHugh and Associates. Parish Council District Representative is Honorable Marty Dean. General location, the property is located on the west side of LA 1077, north of Brewster Road, Covington, Louisiana, Ward 1, District 1. Staff?
The minor subdivision request requires a public hearing due to the fact that parcel B does not have public road frontage and is being accessed via a 35 access servitude. Parcel A and B do not meet the minimum lot width of 150 feet and that is required under the A2 suburban district. It requires a waiver of the regulation by the Planning Commission. Staff has no objection to the request, considering that parcels A and B meet the minimum lot size of 1 acre under the A2 suburban zoning district.
Okay, thank you. Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this? I'll close it to the public, bring it back to the commissioners. Any commissioner wish to make a motion or anything? Commissioner Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is the petitioner here? I have a quick question. Would you come to the podium?
Yes, sir.
Your name, please.
Spencer Bean, I'm the owner of the property, yes, sir.
Thank you. I don't have any issues with it. It already, I mean, it's not any wider than it was prior to this subdivision. My only question is, you've got an easement or a right-of-way there for the driveway as it's depicted here.
Correct.
Is it going to be just one driveway for both parcels?
One driveway for both parcels.
So we're not going to have two curb cuts into Highway
No, sir.
1077?
I currently own all 3.36 acres, and I want to subdivide it with my father, sell him the front acre, or donate the front acre, and he wants to build a house right there in the front part of the property.
Okay. With that,
Mr.
I have-
Richard, unfortunately, that's not gonna be possible. Each house will have to have its own driveway. They can be side by side, but they will have to have its own driveway. That's a requirement. The servitude of passage is for the property in the rear.
I got that. I can see the servitude of passage here, but what I was trying to avoid was, they can have two driveways on the same piece of strip of land. It's just, could it be just one wide driveway? Or when it comes down to 1077, are we gonna have two drives feet apart?
Well, they can just be, basically side by side. We've had a request like that recently, but it will have to be two separate driveways.
Understood. All right, well, that answers my question. With that, I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, thank you.
Motion by Commissioner Richard to approve. Commissioner Randolph.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Randolph. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, next item is 2019-1519 MSP, a minor subdivision of parcel 7A1-A into parcel 7A1-AA, 7A1-AB, 7A1-AC, 7A1-AD, 7A1-AE. The owners are Allstate Financial Company, Bruce Weiner. The surveyor is John E. Bono and Associates. This is in Honorable Marty Dean's council district. General location, the property is located on the south and west sides of Oshner Boulevard, west of LA 21, south of LA Highway 1085, Covington, Ward 1, District 1.
The minor subdivision requires a public hearing due to parcel A1A being part of a minor subdivision approved in April 2010, and parcel A1AA being less than 1 acre in size requires a waiver of the regulation by the Planning Commission. Staff doesn't have any objection to the requested minor subdivision and the request for the waiver, since the lot, since parcel 7A1A meets the minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet, which is required under the PBC2 Planned Business Campus Zoning District. And it is subject to the following requirements. The plat must be amended to include a signature line for the chairman of the planning commission. Also add the prior minor subdivision case number to the plat. And in regards to number one, at first, there was a discussion with the director of the Department of Environmental Services requesting that a 15-foot utility servitude be provided. However, the petitioner here will explain you that he is going to request a waiver of that, and if necessary, then I'll just add if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Roan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone on behalf of Allstate Financial Company and the Weiner family. This track is part of their holdings on the west side of Highway 21 and actually west of the Ochsner Boulevard extension. We have no objection to the comments from the staff regarding amending to include the signature line for the chairman and also the reference to the prior subdivision case number. As Ms. Lambert mentioned, with regards to the 15-foot utility servitude, Mr. Weiner spoke with Mr. Tim Brown of Tammany Utilities, and through that discussion, it was determined that at this time, the 15-foot utility servitude is not needed. If and when a roadway is created through these very large parcels, that would be the point in time when we know exactly where that road will be, that we will strip along that road with that 15-foot utility servitude. But since we don't know that just yet, and we're dealing with some very large parcels here that in the future could be developed in any number of ways, it seemed more prudent to wait and establish that servitude at a later date. Mr. Brown was comfortable with that, so we would request that that not be a requirement here, or that requirement be waived. Otherwise, we would respectfully request your approval of the minor subdivision as shown on Mr. Bono's plat. As you see, there are two very large tracts, one over 75 acres, one just over 90 acres. The smaller parcel, the 10-acre parcel further to the south, that is for a regional detention pond. Mr. Weiner, in these properties in this area, has found that it works better if he creates regional detention. And so that is the purpose of creating that smaller parcel in that location. The other two small parcels are to accommodate proposed commercial buildings. One is a very large Class A building that will be located directly on Ochsner Boulevard Extension on parcel 7A1AB. And the smaller .808 parcel is for a professional office, which is to be located there along the cul-de-sac near the River Resource Bank facility, which is next door. So with that being said, we would respectfully request your approval of the minor resub, subject to the two comments that Ms. Lambert noted, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners might have.
Thank you, Mr. Morone.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience have any questions, comments? I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Randolph.
Yes, sir, I'd like to make a motion to approve with the waiver.
Okay. Commissioner Drum?
I'd like to second that motion with the waiver.
Okay. Second by Commissioner Drum. I do have one question, Paul, and I know the staff is okay with the waiver on the .2 acres, but since you have such a large tract, why would you not increase that .8 to 1.0?
Well, that's a good question. And because the buyer could only use the .8, the additional .2 was well in excess of what they needed for what will be a law office. And so the use dictated that parcel. And so that really was the first parcel that was identified the need for the minor subdivision. And it was with that particular use.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second on 1519 MSP. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, re-subdivision review, we have none. Petitions, waiver request, we have none. Dormant subdivision review, we have none. Tentative subdivision review. First item is 2019-1516 TP Lakeshore Villages Phase 8. The developer owner is D.R. Horton Incorporated, Gulf Coast. Engineer surveyors, Duplantis Design Group, PC, Acadia, Land Surveying LLC. This is in Honorable Michelle Blanchard's Council District. General location, the property is located on the north of Oak Harbor Boulevard, west of LA 433, east of I-10, Slidell, Louisiana, Ward 9, District 3. Staff?
Yes, sir. The tentative plan has been reviewed by this office. An inspection was made of the site on June 27th, 2019. It is recommended that the tentative submittal be approved, subject to the following comments. 1, an updated traffic impacts analysis, including Phase 8 of this development, must be submitted and approved by St. Tammany Parish and Louisiana DOTD. 2, approval from 911 addressing for all road names and addresses within Phase 8 will need to be provided when submitting for preliminary approval. And 3, a waiver of the minimum driveway requirement is being requested for lot number 1827 to reduce the required distance of 60 feet to 48 feet. In order to approve this waiver request, a 2/3 majority vote of full membership of the commission is needed.
Thank you. Mr. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Jeff Shane with the Jones Fussell Law Firm, P.O. Box 1810 in Covington, and I represent D.R. Horton, the owner and developer. We are in full accord with staff comments. With regard to the first staff comment, this is a consistent comment that you've seen in Lakeshore at the tentative level. We understand that traffic mitigation or traffic improvements are needed, and as I discussed with you last month concerning other phases of Lakeshore, that plan is being put together, and we understand that at the time we come back to you for preliminary, there will be a definitive plan that's been agreed upon by not only the parish but also DOTD. The second comment with regard to the 911 is obviously a mechanical item which we will take care of and understand. The third item, we have one lot of the 260 that does not meet the minimum driveway requirement. If you'll take a look at the last page of the staff report, at least I hope it's your last page, it should be a graphic representation. Kind of an unusual situation in that this particular square is only so many feet wide, and as you can see, depending on which corner of the house you orient the driveway, you're not going to be able to achieve 60 feet. The good news is that we've figured a way to position the house such that we actually have, as the sketch shows, a little over 60 feet from the edge of the drive to the back of curb of the road. And we also have actually 49.15 feet to the right-of-way itself. So although it is a waiver item, it's one that's very close to being in compliance and should not present any risk of safety to anyone traveling in the area. So with those comments, we are in full accord. Request tentative approval subject to the waiver for item 3. And if any of you have any questions, I'll be glad to address them.
Thank you, Mr. Shane.
Yes, sir.
Anyone in the audience wish to comment on this item? Close it to the public, bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Randolph.
On item number 1, the TIA, the traffic impact, is there a designated time when the TIA is actually done? Time of the day? Is it?
Oh, you mean the study?
Yeah, the study.
Yes. The parish has regulations, which staff can be more particular than I, but there are certain days of the week, days of the year, weeks of the year that are appropriate, and there are certainly times of the year when it's believed that the traffic would not be the norm, if you will, so that you obviously can't do the counts and testing during that period of time. I mean, a prime example would be that you would not find the peak on Sunday morning that you would find Monday through Friday. Mm-hmm. You would not find the peak in the summer hour when school is out that you might find when school is in session and people are moving children to school in the morning. So hopefully that responds to the question.
That's fine, and I always get kind of confused with such economic development in the parish and these traffic impact studies. I was just curious as to when they happen, especially during school hours. But with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to approve with the waiver of item number 3.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Randolph to approve with the waivers. Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You guys know a lot of times I don't like approving this waiver, but this makes perfect sense this time, and so I second the motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item is preliminary subdivision review. The first item was postponed. Next item is 2019-1513 PP, Copper Ridge. Developer owners Copper Ridge LLC, care of Shelby LaSalle Jr. LLC. The engineers J.V. Berkson Associates LLC. Parish Council District Representative is Honorable Jake Roby. General location, this property is located at the end of Hazel Drive, north of Montmartre Street, Mandeville, Ward 4, District 7. Staff?
Yes, sir. The preliminary plans and hydrologic study have been reviewed by this office, and an inspection was made of the site on June 26, 2019. It is recommended that preliminary submittal be approved, subject to the following comments. Number 1, a waiver of the minimum lot frontage requirements is required for lots number 1, 8, and 9, and must be granted or the lot configuration revised to meet the minimum requirements. Number 2, a stamped, dated, and signed plan set is required and must be submitted to St. Tammany Parish. Number 3, revise the preliminary plat title block to state preliminary plat. 4, the servitude for the monument sign cannot be placed on private property. Relocate the servitude or reduce the lot size to place the monument sign within HOA property. 5, revise restrictive covenant number 13 to include all drainage structures and features located within the green space. 6, revise section AA to show 4-foot depth on the pond in accordance with the drainage impact study. 7, the preliminary plat shows lots numbers 4 through 7 having 90-foot lengths. Revise the pipe lengths according to the drainage plan and in the drainage impact study. 8, revise drainage note number 2 to state class 3 pipe. 9, provide elevations at lot corners on all lots showing existing and as-built grades in conformance with the fill and grading statement and drainage arrows shown on the drainage plan. 10, revise all typical sections to state the pavement design will be determined based on a geotechnical report. 11, a letter of no objection from St. Tammany Parish and LDH approval is required for this development. 12, provide written approval from H2O Systems for the proposed water and sewer plans. 13, provide written verification from H2O Systems that the existing water and sewer systems this development is connecting to have sufficient capacity. 14, show correct no outlet traffic sign on the traffic plan and update signage legend. 15, coordinate the recommended intersection improvements at Hazel Drive and Tanager Drive as outlined in the June 3rd, 2019 traffic letter. 16, revise the pre-development time of concentration on page 4 to state 36 minutes based on the provided formula. 17, remove the C coefficient of 0.3 from the post-development section on page 4. 18, the post-development time of concentration calculation shown on page 4 does not appear to reflect the post-development drainage plan, including subsurface drainage pipe flow. Revise or clarify. 19, update the drainage impact study to include the model reports for the 10-year and 25-year return events. A fund of maintenance obligation in the amount of $10,000 is required in accordance with St. Tammany Parish Code of Ordinances, Part 2, Chapter 125. An additional maintenance obligation in the amount of 618 linear feet at $5 per linear foot of water line and 133 linear feet at $5 per linear foot of sewer line, and 1 jack and bore at $5,000 per bore, for a total of $8,700 is required for the construction of the water and sewer lines within the Hazel Drive right-of-way to ensure the repair of any damage to the parish roads from construction activity in connection with the installation of the water and sewer lines. Mandatory developmental fees will be required at final submittal since no public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005.
Thank you. Mr. Morone.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Again, Paul Morone, this time on behalf of Copper Ridge LLC, the developer of Copper Ridge subdivision. There are a number of comments that appear on the staff's list with regards to this preliminary submittal, but most of which are minor and are either plat revisions or minor revisions to the hydrological plan. Mr. Burks, our engineer, is here. He's been through all of the comments and reviewed them against his plans and his hydrological plans, and is confident that there are no substantive issues and that we can meet each of the comments that staff has laid out here. There are a few that I would like to touch on. Number one, which is the request for the waiver of the minimum lot frontage on lots 1, 8, and 9. If you will look at the plan, you will see that each of these lots are on a part of the curvature of the street. That is the reason that we're making that request. The lots are still plenty wide. Lot number 1 is at 82 feet. The other two are one at 74 and one at about 75 feet. So they are significantly wide. They are also each meet or actually exceed by a significant amount the minimum lot size. So they're not small lots, and there is plenty enough access way and frontage there, we would respectfully suggest, with the need arising because they are on the curvature of the streets in these different areas. So we would respectfully request that waiver. With regards to item 4, and the sign servitude that is currently identified on lot 1, we will remove that servitude from the plat as requested. Items 11, 12, and 13 are all standard items that you see that typically come after preliminary subdivision approval would be granted. And we have no anticipation at this time that there would be any problem with approvals from St. Tammany Parish, LDH, or from H2O Systems. All of our preliminary indications and conversations with H2O is that they have the capacity and they'll be able to service the development. So we anticipate no problems there. All of the other comments will be properly addressed by Mr. Burks. In regards to comment 15, which is the suggestion that we should coordinate the recommended intersection improvements at Hazel Drive and Tanninger Drive. We reached out to Councilman Groby. In our meeting with Councilman Groby and some of the residents from Maroney Trace, which I'm going to touch on in more detail in a moment, Mr. Groby committed to making some suggested changes that our engineer had recommended for that intersection. So we've reached out to him, and we will continue to coordinate those efforts so that those improvements are made. If you will remember, several months ago, I appeared before you at tentative. And at that time, there were a number of people in the audience in opposition, either opposition or with some strong concerns about the project. And you may also remember that at the time, Chairman Davis and others echoed some concern about the plan because we had not proposed a retention pond. We had proposed to pay a fee in lieu of detention, which is allowed under the ordinance, but there was concern from some of the residents. There was some concern from the commission. We heard those concerns. We heard the concerns of the residents, and so we've made some what I believe to be significant changes between tentative and preliminary on those two issues. First, if you will look at the plan, you will see that in fact we do have a detention pond in the northeast corner. We are not requesting a fee in lieu anymore. We will comply with the 25% reduction on the 100-year storm event, and we'll accomplish that in the pond that is here on our site. In addition, we met with Councilman Groby, as I mentioned a moment ago, as well as Mr. Charlie Lesh, who's here this evening, and several other members from Maroney Trace, which is next door to us. Some of their primary concerns, in addition to the drainage and the need for detention pond, was that our lots 1 through 8 on our tentative plan backed up directly to the lots in Maroney Trace. And they were concerned about the impact that having lot lines abutting lot lines would have. As a result of our meeting and our discussions, we made some revisions to the plat, the most significant of which is that you will see that our lot lines for 1 through 8 do not abut Maroney Trace anymore. We have reduced the depth of those lots so that we are able to create a green space strip behind them. So there is a 10-foot strip that will be green space, that will be maintained by our homeowners association, but it will provide some separation. And that is on the plat, and if approved this evening, that will be part of our plan. Beyond that, we went a little bit further because while 10 foot is better than no feet, we felt like there was a need to try to further address their concerns. So there are a few things that I'm going to state on the record this evening that would not be part of your approval, but I want to be clear for the commission, I want to be clear for Mr. Lesh and for the people that took the time to come out, meet with us, talk to us about their concerns. We've committed to do some things, and I want to be very clear on the record what those things are so that there's no confusion going forward. In addition to the 10-foot green strip, we also committed that we would require in our restrictive covenants that each builder upon the construction on any of these lots would be required to build a 6-foot opaque fence at the back property line. So you'll have a 10-foot strip, you'll have an opaque fence of 6 feet. Then on the inside of that fence, we're going to establish a 10-foot mature hardwood tree preservation area. That doesn't mean that you can't go in and underbrush it and make it pretty, but what it says is that if you've got mature trees, and we'll define what that is, that we expect you to maintain those. So we'll have the 10-foot strip, we'll have the fence, we'll have this mature tree preservation area, and we'll also have setbacks, building setbacks of 25 feet. So again, trying to get as much separation. Finally, in order to make sure that the residents that would be affected by this, i.e. those people living in Maroney Trace immediately next door, have some recourse in the event that these aren't followed, in our restrictive covenants, we will provide the right of enforcement of these provisions to those lot owners. So if these requirements and commitments are not followed through with, there will be a mechanism for them to enforce them. They won't have to rely on the parish. They would be able to take their own individual right of action. So I wanted to be clear about that. Mr. Lesh is here. He will correct me if I have misspoken on any of those. But I wanted to make it abundantly clear to everybody what it was that we committed to, and that we appreciated the time and effort of Mr. Lesh and his group and Mr. Groby in setting up that meeting. It was very productive, and I think it had a positive outcome for all involved and for our project. So with that rather long-winded explanation of how we got from where we were to where we are today, we would respectfully request your approval of the preliminary submittal, subject to the staff comments that I've noted earlier, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners might have at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Morone. We do have 2 speaker cards on this, and the first one I've got here is from Mr. Lesh. So if you'll come up and make your presentation, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Charles Lesh, 544 Tanager Drive in the Maroney Trace subdivision. I, along with neighbors on each side of my house, whose properties back up to the proposed development, did have a very productive meeting with Mr. LaSalle, Mr. Marone, and Councilman Groby. I'm very appreciative to them for taking the time to meet with us. We did work out the changes that Mr. Marone has described. We're very pleased that we got that cooperation from the developer. And so as far as those matters are concerned, we're very happy with that, and we're very appreciative. There are some remaining concerns about traffic, but that remains to be worked out. But we're very happy with the changes that Mr. Marone has described. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have Ms. Susan Hibbs. Please come up, state your name and address, please.
Hi, Susan Hibbs, 1748 Hazel Drive, Mandeville. I too want to, I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. Abity, who met with the gentleman a couple weeks ago. He wasn't able to be here tonight, but he asked me to come to thank everybody for cooperating with us, listening to our concerns that we had, and acting on our concerns. I just wanted to show again the concerns for flooding. The event that we had yesterday, it was a 30-minute rain event, and we were flooded again. Monterey was flooded, Hazel was flooded, and it is a huge concern of ours. And I just want to reiterate that all of that water from that property will be diverted to that retention pond. That's correct? Okay. And that, so Hazel will not be flooded by that area? Less water. Okay. And also that the street was going, Hazel Street would be widened, and there would be, y'all would cover that ditch on the other side of the houses and the widening of the street, so that, and that would have culvert underneath? That had been? Okay. Okay. And that's all, that's our concerns, but I just wanted to thank them again for listening to us about the flooding concern, because that is a huge concern of ours.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else in the audience wish to speak in favor? Yes, ma'am, please state your name and address.
Yes, I'm Janice Mayfield. I live at 1462 Fox Court in Trailwood, which abuts the same subdivision plan. I came too late. I didn't get a speaker card, but I'll fill one out. And comments may not necessarily be approval. I appreciate their meeting that they had with Mr. Grobian, putting it together, but we were not informed of that meeting, nor were we invited. But we have at least 3 properties that abut this subdivision as well. And my main concern is that this, to drain to the detention pond or retention pond is from south to north. So they are forcing, through the grading of the subdivision, to flow this water towards our property, towards the back of their subdivision. Now, that's a big concern, because if it doesn't work, it is heading right to our yard. There is, at this point, no setback. Well, there's a setback, but there is no defined green space, swale, separation of property, or tree line in this plan that I know of, and I don't have the latest map, that would help Trailwood, the back of Trailwood. Instead, we're going to have all the flow to our side and the retention pond abutting one of our properties. So this is not acceptable to Trailwood, anybody. We have now been surrounded by 3 subdivisions, and our subdivision was built in 1980s. I've been in my house since 1989, 30 years. Because of all these new subdivisions and their base raise level on their homes and streets, we are now going to be the lowest area around. We have got to address our flooding issues beyond this subdivision. And as it is, the retention pond is going to that northeast corner. No one has discussed where it goes from the retention pond. How is it going to hook into Little Castine Bayou? Is that correct? The little one, the Parish one that was man-made. On the maps that I had seen, there's no way. It's pretty far already. It'd be even further to go if it were at the front of the subdivision. I really don't know where they're planning to move that water out of and how it's going to go through. One way is to come into our subdivision through and surrounding 2 houses where there's already a ditch that goes over to Little Bayou Castine. They are all minor ditches, and there's already subservience to these homes that go next to the ditches. We already had an engineer building up one home in our subdivision, in our cul-de-sac, and this one ditch, if that's where they're going to tie into, will overwhelm and further subside the foundations of these two houses, and possibly all of ours. Nothing goes towards Garin. It's already difficult to move from the back of our subdivision to the front. The pond at the end of Nelson is non-functioning at this time, and the timeline on Kings Point is years out, as well as, the final timeline on Copper Ridge. I understand that we don't have a choice, that we're going to have this thing built. I just want it right so that I, who have been here 30 years, and my neighbors are not penalized for being here the longest, paying the taxes for the longest, and still being flooded after we've had our homes virtually long enough to be paid for and get flooded. To mitigate this would be, don't build the subdivision. It's an open land right now. It's served the area well. It doesn't have to happen. And I really hope that if it happens, had I been invited to this meeting or known about it, or Dave Robotham, our president of our homeowners civic association, we would have attended. We've worked with Mr. Grovey on a similar meeting with Kings Point. So it's not as if we're not willing. We want to meet. We want to have at least the same considerations to Trailwood that Maroney Trace has been afforded at the very barest minimum, which would be fencing, trees, separation, a swale, a guarantee that that water will not come into Trailwood before it exits to some larger waterway. That is a reasonable request. And I really hope that you give this a lot of thought before, and maybe, address some of these concerns in the engineering plan of the parish. I really hate that we keep getting or not considered when they're putting in these subdivisions on every green space available in just outside of West Mandeville. It's really crazy. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this? Yes, sir. Please come up and state your name and address.
My name is David Robotham. I live at 2309 Swan Court. I'm in the Trailwood subdivision. I am the president of the TCA, which is Trailwood Civic Association. I lived in the home since '95. Trailwoods has stayed pretty quiet as far as letting things build up around us. We're not opposed to development, but we've had the Woodlands come in behind us. We've had Maroney Trace come in on the other side of us. We're going to have Kingswood closing the gap on where the holding pond is that drains into Little Bayou Castine. And now we're facing Copper Ridge closing down the other side. And just reinstating what Janice had said, our code is lower since we're such an older subdivision. Everybody's built up around us. At the time that Maroney Trace came in, our subdivision and our civic association was dormant at the time. We lost our president because he moved. We allowed that to go in. All the back houses down Tortoise, which is our main, all the back houses down Nelson Street, which is our main entrance or entranceway, all those houses that back up to Maroney Trace, all their backyards flood. They're completely underwater, within a foot of water. Their yards are non-existent during a rainstorm, even a small rainstorm. So I think what she's saying is basically the Maroney Trace has been granted that 10-foot easement or whatever in between with green space or whatever. I think that we should be allowed that as well. We're creating basically a levee system around Trailwood, and now that we're the lowest spot, we're becoming the holding pond. And like I said, without Little Bayou Castine's pond operational and Little Bayou Castine being taxed to its max, I think, capacity right now, I'd like to know when they detain that water in their pond on that north east corner, where is the water going to exit to? Is it going to go south, or is it going to go push into our existing ditch that drains into Little Bayou Castine? Because if that's the case, you're going to push water south into water that's coming. Water's going to be coming from north to south, and then they're going to have water coming from south to north, trying to shove through the same area right there. And then, like I said, if they're pushing that to Little Bayou Castine, not only are you loading up Little Bayou Castine with with more water, which it's not able to handle. I think it's to its max right now until the pond is operational. So those are our concerns, I think, and that and us losing the green space, the natural drainage. There's some very big live oaks in there, and I'd like to know where the properties lay in that area, and what are they going to do with those live oaks? Are they going to leave them? Are they going to leave those lots open? Are they going to build the houses around them, or what? So those are kind of our concerns there on that. And like I said, we've stood quiet for quite a long time, but now it's getting to the point where we're starting to lose our peace in our neighborhood because of this. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you, appreciate it.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? All right, we'll go to rebuttal.
Just a few comments in rebuttal. First, respectfully, the owners of this property have the right of use of their property just like the other owners, just like the lot owners out there have the right of use of their property. So to suggest, well, this should just say green space, as private property, that owner has a vested right to be able to reasonably use that property and to use that property reasonably in accordance with your regulations. And I would submit to you that that's what you have before you in our plan. Ms. Mayfield said she wants to make sure that this is done right. I respect that. I agree with that. We want to make sure that this is done right. You want to make sure this is done right, and your staff wants to make sure that this is done right. Part of this process is to try to make sure that this is done right. Presently, much of this property already drains to the northeast corner. At the northeast corner, under the plan, it will be retained for the first time. So much of the water is going here now, but without any retention, so now it will have an opportunity to be retained, and it'll meet the requirements of a 25% reduction in that runoff on a 100-year storm event, which is significant. It's a significant pond that is required there. As for the outfall, the water from this pond is going to go into an existing outfall that is already in place there, which takes the water away from the Trailwood subdivision. Our water does not go to them. So they will not be receiving our water. It'll be captured, it'll be retained, and it'll be released in the opposite direction. Also, it's important to note that all of the drainage in this development is going to be subsurface. So we're not going to be creating swales. We're going to take that water, we're going to bring it to the front, we're going to collect it, and we're going to take it subsurface to that pond, which will be a most effective and efficient way to make sure that it is done right and that this drainage system works as designed. So we appreciate the comments, we appreciate the concern, we recognize that concern, and we're sensitive to that concern. We knew when we started this project that we would be scrutinized, if you will, because we were one of the last undeveloped sites. The last person to the dance is always going to get a little bit more scrutiny than the first person. And so we were very diligent in meeting with staff, in working with our engineer to make sure that we identified what was going on around us and that we designed this plan in a manner so that it meets your requirements and that it works properly. And we're comfortable and confident that it is going to do that. And so we would respectfully request your approval this evening of the plan as proposed. It is a plan that has been vetted and it has been modified to make it better and to address the concerns that we are aware of. And those concerns are specific in some sense, but general in others. And they inure not only to make sure our development works right, but to make sure that we're a good neighbor to all of our surrounding developments, including Marigny Trace and Trailwood. So we would respectfully request your approval this evening. We believe that our plan meets your requirements and that it's worthy of your support, and we hope you will grant that to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morone. Some of the folks that spoke against, would you like to rebut anything Mr. Morone has said?
Thank you. I would like to have this decision postponed until the members of Trailwood were to meet with the developers so that we can also become a part of the plan that has the same concessions afforded to Marini Trace at the very minimum. They did not meet with us. We are as big, we are very concerned, just as the members of Marini Trace are, about their properties. If we could table this until we had a chance to meet with the developer and their engineers, and with our homeowners, who are very concerned. They didn't all come this time as much as they did last time, but I would like to be able to go back to them and say, we have a meeting with those developers. This is not something that is so time-sensitive that you couldn't afford us this postponement. And I'd like to meet with them, our homeowners group, and our concerned homeowners themselves. That's what I would ask at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, I just have one thing on the holding pond. He stated that the water is going to be detained, and he said that it's going to be directed away from Trailwoods. I'd just like to know what direction it's being directed away from Trailwoods. Is it going from north? The only way it can be directed away from Trailwoods is if it goes south. And I don't believe that it's going south. I want to know what ditch it's going to drain into. Is it going south to Little Bayou Castine, or is it going to go east and then cross over through Marini Trace and into Little Bayou Castine? So it's kind of vague on where it's going, because if it's using the access ditch that runs north to south behind Fox Court, Owl, and Jones Street, that lateral ditch runs down and then runs and cuts through Marini Trace and goes out into Little Bayou Castine. So that's why I was concerned if his water is going to meet into there as well, because if that happens, it slows the drainage down from 3 of our courts that drain down and drain out into Little Bayou Castine that cut through Marini Trace. So, and my other big concern is, like Janice said, with no green space or any swell or any collection agents, between the property lines, they're butted up right to the back of Trailwoods. It's affecting actually 4 homes, 1 on the side of Tortoise and 3 down on Fox Court, which is one is Miss Janice. But like I said, that water, being that their elevation is so much higher, is going to flood the backyards of every single one of them. There's no possible way for our water to get out. They'll drain onto us, and then eventually our water, I guess, will flood out down towards their holding pond or down towards the end of, Fox Court. But it's still going to be a major problem for all those homeowners. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in rebuttal? Mr. Morone, you have any comments?
Sure, I'll be happy to try to clarify. The retention pond will drain to the east through some existing culverts that are there that will take it through Marini Trace. So that's where the water is going now, and that's where it will go after, but it will, there will be less runoff after this is built than before because of that pond. But it will go to the east. With regards to flooding them, all of our lots, as I mentioned before, will be graded to take all of the water to the front to enter into the subsurface drainage system. So our lots will not drain to the rear. And with regards to the meeting was set up at the request of by Councilman Groby at the request of Marini Trace. We were asked to participate in that meeting. We did not determine who was invited and who was not invited. After the meeting 2 months ago, Mr. Lesh approached me and asked if we could talk and if we could get together. So through Mr. Groby, we had that meeting. And those were the individuals that were invited, and we were happy to participate in that. That being said, as a result of that endeavor, we've already delayed the project 1 month. So we would not be interested in further delay. At this point, the plan has been completed, the plan is in compliance, and respectfully, we believe the plan is worthy of being approved. Does that mean that we would not talk to Mr. Robotham or Ms. Mayfield? Absolutely not. It does not mean that. And I would be happy to speak with him. I would be happy to meet with them, but I would not be in support of a postponement this evening because I don't think that the case merits that. So we would respectfully request action tonight with the understanding that, that we'd be happy to follow up with Mr. Robotham and Ms. Mayfield at a later date. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Morone. Okay, we've had presentations and rebuttal, so I'm going to close it to the public and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Randolph.
First of all, I want to recognize the infinite wisdom of this commission, being an impartial and independent body and encouraging communication and dialogue with the developers and the homeowners and the residents that this development may or may not impact. And I want to commend you all. I want to commend the developers and the residents for participating in that effort, because there is positive, productive results when you communicate, come there with your passion and with your thoughts, your ideas, but be open-minded as well. And I appreciate that, and I really get excited about it because last month, we do recall how packed this room was, and before that. But as a result of that communication, we do have some positive results. Don't get everything, we don't appease everybody, but the majority of it is that we get positive results. And I have a couple questions though, Mr. Morone, if you don't mind. The lots 1, 8, and 9,
Yes.
you're asking for, I'm sorry? Oh, okay.
Yes, that's correct.
They're already oversized lots, but once you do the configuration, do you have any ideas what the sizes would be?
Well, as depicted here, the sizes are there. So these and those front footages that I noted is what you see on your plan. So, for example, it looks like Lot 1, the type is a bit small, but it looks like it's Mr. Burks has his glasses.
It's about 81 feet.
When it's at the size of the lot, 13.
13,425.
So it's 13,425, and I think the minimum is 12,500, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, it's 10,008.
I'm sorry, 10,008. So it's significantly larger than what the minimum lot size would be. And that's the same with both lots 8 and 9 as well. That's correct, yes.
Okay, as it relates to the paving and drainage plan, did you address items 6 through 10?
Yes, our engineer has been through each of those items, and we will comply with them as recommended by staff.
Okay. What intersection improvement on item 15 need to be done for Hazel and Tanager?
And I'm going to ask my engineer to correct me if I miss it, but I believe that I can tell you. Right now, that is not an always stop, and it should be. So they should add a stop sign to that area. Also, the location of the stop signs should be modified so that it's more clear, and that there should be some brush within the right-of-way at that intersection should be cleared out to give better sight lines. And I believe those are the improvements that were recommended and that we discussed with Mr. Groby.
Okay. Last question, Paul, and this is kind of out of the ordinary. Should Trailwood have some questions for you and Mr. Burke? Are you, I heard you before, but I want to ask you again, are you open to receive and hear what they're discussing to give some legitimate answers as it relate to the best development for this?
I'm absolutely willing to discuss and meet with them and talk about their concerns in this project and how the two will coexist. I'm happy to do that. I'll be happy to share my phone number with them and my email address, and I'll be happy to follow up with them.
Okay. Want to commend you all also with going the extra mile, not just with the retention pond, but the lot lines, the extra restricted covenant detail. I really appreciate that, and I'm just going to go ahead on and make a motion that we approve the plan
With the waiver?
with the waivers.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Randolph to approve with the waiver. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
I'll second the motion and also concur that I appreciate it when it works, when homeowners and residents can get together with the developers, go over issues, work through things. And I encourage the members of Trailwood to get with Mr. Marone before he departs tonight, get his phone number, and I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you, as he said. But I will second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, next item is 2019-1493. Pardon? I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Simpson Farm. Yeah, yeah. All right, I think we can go forward now. The next item and final subdivision review, 2019-1493 FP, Lakeshore Villages, Phase 3A2. The developer owners DR Horton Incorporated Gulf Coast, engineer surveyors Duplantis Design Group, PC, Acadia Land Surveying, LLC. This is in Honorable Michelle Blanchard's Parish Council District. Location of the property is located north of Oak Harbor Boulevard, west of Louisiana Highway 433, east of I-10, Slidell, Ward 9, District 13. Staff?
Mr. Chairman, we had a request to move an item up.
Okay, we can move it up.
Okay.
Paul, are you ready on Simpson? Yes. Okay, we're going to hold up on 1493. We did have a request to move up 2019-1495 FP at Simpson Farms Phase 1, developer owners Prudent Creek Partners LLC, engineer surveys Kelly McHugh and Associates, Parish Council District Representatives Honorable James Thompson. General location, the property is located on the north side of Penn Mill Road, across from Pruden Road, Ward 3, District 3. Mr. Staff.
This project was postponed for 1 month at the June 11th, 2019 meeting. Periodic inspections were made by this office during construction, and the second final inspection was made on June 26, 2019. The inspection disclosed that all the asphalt roads, shoulders, and roadside ditches are constructed and functioning. Several comments. Number 1, provide asphalt core test results for Sod Way. 2, provide utility trench and backfill test results. 3, the ditch along the east side of Turf Drive, south of Grassy Lane, is holding water and will need to be regraded to provide positive flow. 4, the roadside ditch along the north side of Pin Mill Road, including the subdivision entrance culvert, has been silted in and needs to be cleaned out and regraded from the subdivision's western property line to the eastern property line. 5, green space areas GS1, 2, and 3 need to have a mature stand of grass established. 6, the boulevard median needs to be filled, final graded, and have a mature stand of grass established. Should the Planning Commission approve the request for final approval, a warranty obligation will be required for the infrastructure in the amount of 3,306 linear feet. at $22 per linear foot for a total of $72,700 for a period of 2 years. Staff recommends approval of the proposed final subdivision request, subject to the developer complying with all comments and no plats to be signed until all items are satisfactorily completed. Mandatory developmental fees are required as follows: a road impact fee of $1,077 per lot for 62 lots for a total of $66,774. A drainage impact fee of $1,114 per lot for 62 lots for a total of $69,068. Fees are due before subdivision plats can be signed. This subdivision is within the urban growth boundary line. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Morone again, on behalf of Prudent Creek Partners LLC. I thank you for moving this matter up. I have another matter in the city of Mandeville that I need to get to, so there's an angry mob down there waiting for me, so I need to hurry down. With regards to Simpson Creek, as you see, all of the field work is completed. The outstanding items really can be captured in 3 categories. There are some tests that are needed. The asphalt core tests are done. I have those in my possession, and we're prepared to submit those at the appropriate time. There was some confusion about the utility trench and backfill tests. Working with Mr. Reynolds, we got clarity on that. It is the bedding test that's needed. K&L testing has been advised. They know. They're working on that. We will have that in very short order as well. So I expect both of those to be resolved by the end of the week. The paving and drainage are the other 2 items. There is some grading work that needs to be done because of the siltation that has occurred in some of the ditches. The contractor has been contacted. Weather permitting, he will have that grading work done by the end of the week. I say weather permitting because there's a little system that's brewing off the coast that we're not sure what that's going to bring to us or when it's going to get here. But our hope is that we will get that grading work done before that gets to us. If not, then obviously we'll have to wait and let that dry out. But that is minimal work that can be done rather quickly. Finally, there is the need for a mature stand of grass. We will be hydroseeding all but one area in question. The hydroseed company was out there today, and as soon as the grading is completed, they are prepared to do the hydroseeding. So that too will come in very short order. The one area that will not be hydroseeded is the median area at the entrance. And the reason that we will not be hydroseeding that is because much of that area will be taken up with landscaping and signage. So our concern when we initially saw the staff comment was that we hated to sod or hydroseed that area only to pull that up when we put the signage and the landscaping in. The good news is, after working with staff, explaining what our concern was, understanding what their concern was, and finding out that we will have the landscaping and the signage installation commencing very quickly, like by the end of the month. What we will be doing there is we'll be heavily mulching that area once the final grade is done for stabilization and to prevent erosion. That will accomplish what the staff wanted. It'll also be easy and cheap for us to put down and take up. So all other areas will be hydroseeded. That area will be filled, graded per the plan, and then heavily mulched to stabilize and to prevent erosion. All of that we're prepared to do in very short order. Hopefully we can beat the weather that is bearing down upon us. And if that's the case, it'll be done by the end of the week. Otherwise, it'll be done soon after that weather clears and the land dries. But all of these are minor items. We would respectfully request your approval for final of this phase, subject to those comments and my explanations this evening. Be happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners might have.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor? Anyone wish to speak against? I'll close it to the public and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Willie.
Yes, they seem to be minor items. I move for approval.
Motion by Mr. Willie to approve. Is that right? Yes. Okay. Commissioner Randolph.
Mr. Morone? And it won't be very long. I know you
No,
have.
it's okay. No.
I know you have a
Thank you.
lengthy meeting, but I have about 15 questions.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, I'm just joking. I second. I second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Randolph. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right. We'll go back to 2019-1493 FP. Let me get my paperwork straight here. All right. Did I read that in? Did I read that in? Okay, all right. So we've already read it in, so Mr. Shane. This is on 2019-1493 Lakeshore Village staff.
Yes, sir. This project was postponed for 1 month at the June 11th, 2019 meeting. Periodic inspections were made by this office during construction. The second final inspection was made on June 27th, 2019. The inspection disclosed that all the asphalt roads are constructed and all subsurface drainage is functioning. The following uncompleted items existed at the time of the final inspection and will be completed before the plats are signed. 1, provide asphalt core test results for Oak Haven Court and Cat Island Court. 2, update lab testing report number 1821 to provide the location of where the testing was performed. 3, provide Proctor dry density test results for Cat Island Court. 4, provide utility trench and backfill test results. Should the Planning Commission approve the request for final approval, a warranty obligation will be required for the infrastructure in the amount of 2,146 linear feet at $22 per linear foot for a total of $47,200 for a period of 2 years. The staff recommends approval of proposed final subdivision request, subject to the developer complying with all comments and no plats to be signed until all items are satisfactorily completed. No mandatory developmental fees are required since a public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005.
Thank you, Mr. Shane.
Mr. Chair, Jeff Shane, Jones Fussell, P.O. Box 1810 in Covington, representing D.R. Horton, the owner and developer. We're in full accord with all staff comments. Our engineer, Duplantis Design Group, submitted the data to the 4 staff comments yesterday to staff. We recognize they won't review it till sometime after this meeting, but we believe that our submissions of yesterday are fully compliant with regard to those requests. So with that having been said, we request that you grant final subdivision approval this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Shane.
Yes.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of this item? Anyone wish to speak against? Seeing none, I will close it to the public and bring it back to the commission. Mr. Byard.
Yeah, I move for approval, subject to staff comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right. Next item, 2019-1511-FP, Gust Island Estates, parcel D1, developer owners McInt Incorporated, engineers Kelly McHugh and Associates. This is in Honorable Mike Lorino's Parish Council District. The location is property located south of LA 22 and east of Gust Island Road, Madisonville, Ward 1, District 4. Staff?
Yes, sir. Periodic inspections were made by this office during construction, and the final inspection was made on June 26, 2019. The inspection disclosed that all the concrete roads are constructed, road shoulders are constructed, and the roadside ditches need final grading in some areas. The following uncompleted items existed at the time of the final inspection and will be completed before the plats are signed. 1, concrete test results for Rock Dove Drive need to be provided. 2, restrictive covenants need to be updated to reflect ordinance section 125-214. 3, Cross-section AA on the final plat needs to be revised to reflect the correct fill elevation of 11 feet. 4, the drainage servitude behind lots numbers 328 through 336 needs to be shown on the final plat. 5, provide as-built invert elevation for the reinforced concrete arch pipe crossing Fox Sparrow Loop south of lot number 336. 6, the existing ditch and road elevations at House Sparrow Road and at Ringneck Drive are different from the previously approved preliminary plans and need to be verified. 7, the as-built ditch invert shown near lot number 250 is lower than the proposed elevation and lower than the target culvert elevations. Revise the target culvert elevations or raise the ditch to provide positive drainage flow. 8, as-built elevations need to be shown on the filled lots in accordance with the approved fill and grading statement. 9, the roadside ditches near lots 243 through 245 need to be regraded to provide positive flow. 10, revise the as-built sewer line slopes along Fox Sparrow Loop to reflect the as-built elevations. 11, provide a clear water test and letter of acceptance from the water and sewer utility provider. Should the planning commission approve the request for final approval, a warranty obligation will be required for the infrastructure in the amount of 2,525 linear feet at $25 per linear foot for a total of $63,100 for a period of 2 years. The staff recommends approval of proposed final subdivision request subject to the developer complying with all comments and no plats to be signed until all items are satisfactorily completed. No mandatory developmental fees are required since a public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shane.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm, P.O. Box 1810 in Covington, representing McInt LLC, which is the owner-developer of Phase D1, the Oaks in Gust Island Estates. We're in full accord with all staff comments. I would report to you that all items on this list have been completed, perhaps not turned in yet to staff, with the exception of item 9. And item 9 is in the process of being resolved and will be completed in short order. So we don't believe that there are any reasons that this matter should not receive final this evening. We appreciate staff's recommendation in that regard. If any of you have any questions, I'll be glad to address them.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Anyone in the audience wish to speak for? Anyone wish to speak against? I'll close it to the public, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Bagger.
Again, I move for approval, subject to all the staff comments being completed first.
Thank you. Commissioner Randolph.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Randolph. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item is Brentwood Estates. 2019-1515-FP Brentwood Estates. Developer, owner Brentwood Land Development LLC. Engineers Kelly McHugh and Associates. Parish Council District Representative, Honor Riker Toledano. General location, the property located on the north side of Sharp Road and east of Westwood Drive, Mandeville, Ward 4, District 5. Staff?
Yes, sir. Periodic inspections were made by this office during construction, and the final inspection was made on June 26, 2019. The inspection disclosed that all the concrete roads and detention ponds are constructed, but the road shoulders need to be constructed in accordance with the typical cross-section. The roadside ditches need final grading. Postponement of the submittal is advised due to the following uncompleted items that exist at the time of the final inspection and review of the provided plans. These items will need to be addressed before the plats are signed. 1, the boulevard median and cul-de-sac medians need to be filled, final graded, and have a mature stand of grass established. 2, all dead clump bamboo need to be removed and replaced. 3, all culverts need to be cleaned and removed of silt. 4, blue reflectors are needed. 5, all roadways need to be cleaned. 6, shoulders and roadside ditches within the garden home section need to be final graded and have a mature stand of grass established. 7, all drainage ditches need to have a mature stand of grass established. 8, asphalt core testing results for the new turn lane on Sharp Road need to be provided. 9, riprap within the road right-of-way near lot number 29 needs to be removed. 10, the previous edge of road striping was removed as part of the construction of the turn lane, resulting in exposed aggregate that needs to be tack coated. 11, the relocated Sharp Road roadside ditch needs to be reworked to provide an acceptable shoulder and slope that is stabilized near the new turn lane and subdivision entrance. 12, 911 addresses need to be added to the final plat, and page 2 of the final plat needs to be updated to include the Antioch Drive call-out on the unnamed section of roadway. 13, drainage pipe elevations between lots number 35 and 36 do not provide positive flow. Verify invert elevations are correct for these pipes. Number 14, roadway cross culvert elevations between lots 2 and 40 do not provide positive flow. Verify invert elevations are correct for this pipe. 15, roadway cross culvert elevations for the subdivision entrance culvert do not provide positive flow. Verify invert elevations are correct for this pipe. 16, roadway cross culvert elevations between lots number 13 and 47 do not provide positive flow. Verify invert elevations are correct for this pipe. 17, roadway cross culvert elevations north of green space 1 or higher than the proposed high point and do not provide positive flow. Verify invert elevations are correct for these pipes. 18, roadway cross culvert elevations between lots number 21 and 29 do not provide positive flow. Verify invert elevations are correct for this pipe. 19, roadway cross culvert elevations between lots 58 and 99 do not provide positive flow. Verify invert elevations are correct for this pipe. 20, provide as-built elevation for the outfall of the drainage pipe between lots number 98 and 99. 21, provide as-built elevation for the outfall of the drainage pipe behind lot number 89. 22, provide as-built elevation for the outfall structure of the west pond. 23, provide as-built elevation for the outfall structure of the east pond. 24, based on the as-built elevations, roadside ditches in front of lots 14 through 20 do not provide positive flow. Verify elevations are correct for this ditch section. 25, roadway cross culvert elevations between lots 64 and 94 do not provide positive flow. Verify invert elevations are correct for this pipe. 26, provide as-built elevations for the drainage swale behind lot number 75. 27, provide as-built elevations for the drainage swale behind lot 7. 28, provide as-built elevations for the drainage swale behind lot 13. 29, provide as-built elevation for the proposed ditch in to show conformance to the approved drainage plan. 30, provide target culvert elevations on the as-built paving and drainage plan. 31, the fire hydrant located in the cul-de-sac median in front of lot number 80 is buried and needs to be raised. 32, revise the as-built sewer line slopes within Brentwood Estates to reflect the as-built elevations. 33, provide a letter of acceptance and responsibility for the perpetual maintenance and operation of the water and sewer system from the utility provider. 34, provide a water and sewer system capacity letter verifying that the existing system has capacity for services development. Should the Planning Commission approve the request for final approval, a warranty obligation will be required for the infrastructure, including the turning lane, in the amount of 4,725 linear feet at $25 per linear foot for a total of $118,100 for a period of 2 years. Mandatory developmental fees are required as follows. Road impact fee, $1,077 per lot for 102 lots for a total of $109,854. Drainage impact fees at $1,114 per lot for 102 lots for a total of $113,628. Fees are due before subdivision plats can be signed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff Shane, P.O. Box 1810 of Jones Fussell in Covington, 70433, and I represent Brentwood Land Development, both the owner and developer of Brentwood Estates. Earlier this evening, I requested the table of a final subdivision case before you for Lakeshore Villages Phase 4A1. And I did that in part because staff had recommended postponement, and I agreed that there were items that really had not been adequately addressed by the developer and certainly had not been submitted to staff. Having spent a few second Tuesdays of the month with you through the years and knowing your interest in seeing that final subdivisions are in good order before I bring them to you, I don't want you to think that I cavalierly allowed this nearly last case of the evening to come up with 34 items on it and ask you to consider approval. But I am going to ask you to consider approval this evening because somewhat remarkably, we will testify, demonstrate to you this evening that there is only one of the 34 items that has not been physically completed in the field or has not or will be addressed on the plat. So the circumstances are as follows. Many of the items noted in the parish's final inspection, we disagree in that we think that some of these items, in fact, were complete. If we're mistaken, we understand that certainly staff is going to have to inspect the subdivision again, no matter what the resolution this evening, to ensure that all these items are done. To be more specific, the only item that has not been completed physically on the ground that is noted is item 10, the tack coat of asphalt, where the turn lane was built on Sharp Road. Again, there may be some areas that still require some cleanup and dress up, but Mr. McHugh, who is also the engineer for this project, is with me this evening, and he and I have talked about this for the last few days. Some of the data has been submitted to staff yesterday and or today, realizing they'd have no opportunity to review it, not suggesting that they should have. But again, we believe that this is a situation where there is no items of substance, no items that place the general public at risk as it relates to safety, health, et cetera. And we believe that there is substantial compliance with your ordinance. So we would respectfully request that you grant final subdivision approval, and we understand that the plats will not be signed and recorded until and unless the staff has checked off all 34 items. Again, not to be redundant, but we believe that this gets down to one item. And if you're not familiar with what the TAC process is, Kelly explains to me that it's just a small strip between where the turn lane meets Sharp Road and the entrance to the subdivision. They need to go in and essentially fill that small area where you have new construction merging at the entrance to the subdivision. That's something that he intends to have completed, hopefully by the end of the week, weather permitting. I think everyone's keeping an eye on the weather as it relates to Thursday, Friday. So with those comments, I will be glad to address questions at the appropriate time from the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor?
Not either against or for, just some comments about it.
Well, come on up and.
You call it what you want when I get done, I guess. My name's Ken Ress. I live at 306 Lakeshore Drive, Mandeville. I just live down the road. I've been before you about Brentwood, so my initial stance on Brentwood was not opposed to the actual development. I was opposed to why the development being where it's at, okay, the size of the development on Sharp Road. But that's neither here nor there. We've been long past that for some time. We've worked with the developer and with our representative, Mr. Toledano. We've had several meetings. They worked with us as best we could once we knew it was going to happen. So there was a lot of things they gave to us, and I will say this, I was kind of pleasantly pleased with this project so far, and that I thought it would be a lot more disruptive to Sharp Road activity during this early phases. And to be honest with you, it wasn't. It was pretty much a non-event as far as that goes. So that was pretty good. I don't know how they managed to get all that equipment in. They must have snuck in the middle of the night because it just didn't see it go down the road. So they did well at that. But we're getting ready to move into a new phase, which is now the contractors will be buying up the lots and doing their part, and it'll be a different ball game. Mr. McHugh had a tight hand on it there. I don't know how well he'll do later. We'll see. I will say this, the turn lane that they put in, that there's a comment about the turn lane. I will say this, we were opposed to that turn lane. I actually think it feels awkward. Maybe it's because I'm not used to it, but it feels like when you're approaching that turn lane from east to west, it almost feels like it's a sharper operation than it should be. I don't know if the parish, if there's a guideline that determines how that turn lane is built. It's some specific guide put out by the state or what it is, but I can tell you it just feels awkward. Maybe it's because we didn't, but it does feel awkward. It works, but it feels awkward. As far as this list, it's obvious to me somebody from the parish spent a lot of time in there. I was pleasantly surprised when I read this list at the attention to detail that was here. I will say this, I've been in there several times, watching this whole thing. And I will say this, that there are items on this list that aren't done. There are culverts that are they're still silted. There's standing water in ditches. There is no grass. The entrance to there, the ditches right next to the edge, right, especially where it connects, is sharp, is deep, and there's no shoulder almost for the last so many feet. I would say, you know, I don't doubt that they'll take care of whatever they have to, but I would say there's probably more not done in there than you might believe. But the bigger question is still this. I'm sure all those things will be dealt with. But I still have never heard, I sat in every one of these meetings that I've been to, and I've come to a lot of them now, and I heard it again tonight. Drainage, 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 drainage. That's all you hear is drainage. And this 25% rule of detention ponds, retention ponds. And believing, I think it makes common sense to me that if you collect and hold more than what the land did on its own, it makes sense that you're improving the drainage problem. The only thing I never hear and I never understand is who is responsible for maintaining these ponds down the road? As they fill up with silt, as they lose their capacity, they become non-25%ers after a period of time. They have to. There's still silt and stuff flowing into them. I don't understand where the mechanism is to maintain these ponds and who's assuring that. If it's left up to homeowners associations, I don't see them being in a hurry to go have to spend money to dig their ditches back out or their retention ponds. If the parish isn't measuring them down the road, well, how do we assure? I listened to these people being assured here earlier tonight, don't worry, we're putting in a retention pond, it's going to be better. That's true today when it's brand new. What happens down the road? How are you assuring that? How's the parish? I have not ever heard that yet in any meeting I've been in. How do we assure these retention ponds continue to meet that 25% requirement as the years go on? Can anybody answer that? Can the parish answer that for me?
Well, I can tell you that I've asked Mr. Shane, Mr. Morone a number of times. When that subject comes up, it's up to the homeowners association to maintain it, to be sure that they have mandatory dues in place so that there is monies coming in to take care of these. Now, does the parish go out and inspect these from time to time? I don't think we do we?
Yes, sir. Public Works does maintain and inspect their ponds quite regularly. To kind of address your question, as subdivisions come through on the plat, it denotes whether the subdivision ponds are going to be maintained by either the HOA or eventually donate to the parish and accept it within their maintenance system. Some of that would be privately maintained. If they fail to maintain it, the outfall structure itself doesn't ever change.
I understand that.
But the amount of capacity that pond would have would change.
Exactly.
Which would result in backfilling into the subdivision. So it would be in the best interest of the HOA at that point to come through and maintain it. It's not going to increase the flow downstream because you can only fit so much water.
Doesn't it lose capacity?
It should if it's properly designed and graded out with like a maintainable slope.
Okay, I just, maybe I don't understand the process of the ponds, and I don't think it's the developer so much. If he digs them to code, the parish requires, and the parish is assured those are dug to there, once he turns it over, I just want to know, because you keep assuring people, and I'm sure you're bought into the 25%. I've been in enough of these now, and I'm sure everybody is, but you don't come to a single one of these, the drainage isn't part of it.
Drainage and traffic's the two
We
big
are
items.
putting a lot of emphasis on this 25%. But I would just challenge that we really have a good system in place to assure that we're really doing what we're saying. It's beyond the developers once they turn it over to the homeowners. They've done their part. They developed it. They did it the way it's supposed to be. At some point, there has to be an oversight to these ponds, or else what you thinking you're getting isn't gonna be there. And I'm just not convinced that as they fill up with silt over time, the outflow stays the same, but as they fill, their capacity is to less. And in light of what we just have coming at us here, within the next few days, there'll be a quick reminder of how fast they can fill up. And we continue to have more of those events. I don't know where that falls with this group. Should there be something in the documents that assures that? I don't know. I'm not the one to decide that, but I am a person who would have concerns.
Well, our staff indicated that, they do go out and check
But do you
these.
check the private ones, or do you only check the ones the parish owns? See, the parish has a lot of giant retention ponds, but what about the private ones that are in the subdivisions, that are basically owned by the homeowners associations? Do they go in and measure them and inspect them?
I don't think so.
Some of them
Not
are
on
actual
those. I mean,
retention
it's
ponds.
beyond
They're
the
not detention
responsibility.
ponds, or some of them hold water. I don't even know how you do it.
Well, it's beyond the responsibility of the parish to go out and check a private pond, one that's supposed to be maintained by the homeowners association. But when you see water in the pond that's not supposed to be in the pond, then it's up to the residents who are members of the homeowners association to get with their association and get somebody in there to check it and clean it, whatever it needs.
And like I say, I don't want to tell you how to fix it, but I do think that ought
That's
to
a
be
legitimate
a pretty
question. I
common
mean-
question before approvals are put forward as to how that's going to be maintained and to assure that process takes place. Because there's a lot of people downstream of these new developments that are going to be affected by those.
Right.
And Trailwood was a good example tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay? Thank you.
Any further discussion? Mr. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate Ken's comments, which I didn't take to be necessarily directly directed only toward Brentwood, but also as to the process. But I think to the extent that you're considering Brentwood as it relates to his comments, I'd like to offer some observations. The process does include a declaration by the developer early on as to whether or not the infrastructure is going to be maintained privately. Ultimately, that would be the developer initially, ultimately the HOA, or if it's going to be, in fact, dedicated, donated, turned over to the parish and maintained by the parish. That's something that happens certainly long before final. In this case, the plats, of course, indicate that this is to be privately owned and maintained. With regard to inspection and review, that not only occurs at this time when we're seeking final, but as your comments reflect, and which was read, of course, by Mr. Tischer this evening, there's a 2-year warranty obligation that's put up, which requires, of course, that staff inspect and review the ponds at the end of that 2-year period to determine if the bond or security should be released. I'm not suggesting that that's perfect, but I want to point out some features that are incumbent in the system. I would also tell you, with all due respect to the parish, that in many instances, developers and developments prefer private systems because they can design a dues system, which quite frankly gives them the ability economically and from a management perspective to control the infrastructure, to fix it as they see fit. Because parish government has reasonable constraints in terms of manpower and funding as to what it can do and what it can respond to and how it prioritizes. I'm not throwing Parish Public Works under the bus. I don't think it sounds that way, but I don't want it to sound that way. Not because I'm patronizing. It's simply a matter of how the system works. It's a matter of resources. So in this instance, as Mr. McHugh and many of his developments, the private route was chosen. I think it's a good discussion. It's probably one that really is a legislative issue, one for the council and not for the Planning Commission. And again, kind of getting back to the focus of this evening, I believe that The experience that he has shared with us this evening is that it looks like Brentwood has a chance to fit in this neighborhood. That was what we hoped from the beginning. I recognize we are only constructing the infrastructure at this point, and we have not gone through the 2 years or whatever it may be to build the homes. I can only tell you, though, that I think tonight the test is the infrastructure in place, or will it soon be in place, meaning every item completed. I respectfully disagree with his comments that many of the items are not completed. I'm not sure what personal observations he's making on site. With all due respect, no one from the public should be on this private property until, in fact, this subdivision becomes public. But it doesn't mean that his trespass or his visit on the property was invasive or harmful. But I would feel better if he had brought an engineering report tonight with him, suggesting that an engineer believes that these items had not been complete. So I want to close by trying to frame the issue. This final subdivision had 34 items on it at the time the report was issued on July 2. We believe that many of those items as of July 2 had in fact been completed. I again, for the record, state to you this evening that we believe that all items except item 10 have either been completed in the field or they're items that will be revised on the final plat. For that reason and that reason alone, we think it is not unreasonable to request that you grant final this evening, knowing that staff is going to look at each and every of those 34 items very closely before they sign and record the plats. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. All right. We've had comments both for and against. I'm going to bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Baggert.
Again, I'd move for approval, subject to all the 34 items being complete and not before then.
Motion by Commissioner Baggert to approve, subject just to all these items being completed before the plats are recorded. Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a question more for staff. I think I heard Mr. Shane say that these items are complete, or, correct me if I'm wrong, or they disagree with either our findings or, I don't know, maybe I don't want to put words in their mouth. Did you understand that to be the case? I know you haven't had a chance to review all of their responses yet. Maybe all the responses aren't in. But let me ask Mr. Shane. Mr. Shane, would you come up? Because I think I heard you say that you
Yes, sir.
disagree with some of their findings.
Well, we believe that some of these items were in fact complete at the time of the final inspection, meaning that they would not have been on the punch list before you this evening. But in any event, we're confident that when staff goes out to make its next inspection, that those items are complete. That was the point that I was trying to make. We don't disagree that the items needed to be done, but we believe that the timing as to when they were done, we think some of them were done at the time of the final.
All right, so that's important. You don't disagree with what staff's
No, sir.
saying. You just maybe believe it's been accomplished.
We fully agree that all 34 items must be completed to the satisfaction of the engineering department before the plats should be signed and recorded.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Commissioner Fitzmars. Did it come on?
Nope. Oh, it did. I didn't have to press. You turned it on for me. That was nice. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll second the motion, and I particularly don't like seeing a lot of items, but only due to the credibility of Mr. Shane and Mr. McHugh will I give it a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item is entering parish right-of-way. Resolution 19-003, request to enter the parish right-of-way for Coors Carson Street, Town of Mandeville subdivision for the purpose of extending the street and installing drainage and utility lines. The debtor is BBB Holdings LLC. This is the Honorable Jake Groby's district, and this has to do with the change in ownership. Staff?
Yes, sir. The original petitioner, BBB Holdings, has sold the above referenced property to Affordable Homes and Land. The new petitioner needs to be approved by the Planning Commission. Therefore, it is recommended that action be taken to approve the new petitioner and for him to be responsible for furnishing all documentation required in resolution number 19-003.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience wish to comment on this change in ownership? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Fitzmaurice to approve. Commissioner Baggert. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We have two last items. The ratification of the election for vice chair and appointment of parliamentarian. I'm not real sure what we exactly need to do on this, but last month, Commissioner Casabon turned in her resignation, and at the end of the resignation, she indicated it was effective immediately. So I'm going to turn it over to legal counsel right now to explain what we really have to do.
Yeah, I suggested that this be added just out of an abundance of caution, even though Commissioner Casabon's resignation wouldn't be effective until she submitted it to the Secretary of State, just for the purpose of clarifying it on the minutes. I recommend that someone make a motion to ratify the election last month and that you vote again.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Randolph.
I'd like to make a motion that the commission ratify the election that was taking place last month.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Baggert.
I'll second that emotion.
Second by Commissioner Baggert. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We have no new business. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. Thank you.